Hi, I'm Jamie Carragher and this is my Liverpool top 10 greatest. At number 10, I am going to start with Mr. Liverpool, and that is Ian Callaghan. He always has to be in any top 10 for me. Obviously, didn't see him play too much, seen lots of video footage of him, but the appearances he's got, I think 857, will never, ever be beaten. A local lad, and a player that what really sort of fascinates me and I think is absolutely amazing is this was a man who was part of getting Liverpool out of the second division. Obviously, Bill Shankly does that as the manager. He's part of that team. And the fact he's a young kid, gets Liverpool up to the first division, wins so much, so many trophies, you can't name them all, but he finishes at Liverpool around 77 and 78 with winning the European Cup. So he goes from the second division as a young kid and gets Liverpool to the European Cup final and winning it in 77 and 78. And that journey for me is absolutely fantastic, his longevity. And also, he is the nicest man in the world. Number 9, I'm going to go for another player I didn't see too much of, but I'm going to go for Kevin Keegan. And he's a player that probably isn't remembered as much as he should be, I think, for what he did for Liverpool, because, Kenny comes later and probably takes it on to another level. But when you think of what he did again under Bill Shankly and where these players took the football club, without these players, Liverpool aren't what they are today. And he was a genuine superstar, one of the best players in European football. And he was the superstar of that team that won the league title in 1977. And also the European Cup. And the European Cup final is his last game, famously man-marked by Bertie Vogts, and he runs them ragged in, Liverpool winning their first European Cup. So he was the superstar of one of those early great Liverpool teams. Number 8, I'm going to go for a current player, and I'm going to go for Virgil van Dijk. He's been one of the players who has completely transformed Liverpool's fortunes over the last 10 years, winning league titles, getting to Champions League finals, winning the European Cup. And at times, playing at that level has almost looked easy for him. For me, he's the best centre-back I've seen in the Premier League era, no doubt. One of the greatest centre-backs I've ever seen play the game. And so far above other players he plays against, even some of the top strikers I see him against, it just feels at times easy for him. His passing range, his pace, ability on the ball, there's no real weakness with Virgil van Dijk. And in that Jurgen Klopp team, it was a great team, but it wasn't until he came to the club that it felt like it moved on to another level. 75 million quid, absolute steal. Number 7, I'm going to go for another centre-back. So Virgil van Dijk isn't the greatest centre-back to play for Liverpool in my eyes. He's just a very close second, but that is Alan Hansen. And Alan Hansen, for me, what I love about Alan Hansen, he's almost played in every great Liverpool team. The only thing he's really missed out on probably is coming 12 months early and being part of the 77 team with, obviously the team changes slightly in 78, where it becomes a bit more sort of Alan Hansen, Souness, and Kenny at the top end of the pitch. But he's part of sort of the late 70s, then that sort of early to mid-80s team that wins sort of 3 league titles, a couple of European Cups, lots of Milk Cups. But on the back of that, he's also part of that great late 80s team of Barnes, Beardsley, and John Aldridge as well. So he spans a lot of great teams. And when you think of Liverpool going a long time without winning a league title, I think a lot of that stops when Alan Hansen stops playing. And it doesn't start again until maybe Virgil van Dijk comes. So I think he was ahead of his time, the way he played the game. For me, watching clips and videos of him, I caught the end of his sort of time as a player. And he was different to every other centre-back in the first division at that time. It was about heading it and kicking players. That wasn't Alan Hansen at all. As I said, the greatest centre-back to ever play for Liverpool Football Club. Number 6, I'm going to go for the Egyptian king, Mo Salah. He's always going to be in the top 10, anyone's top 10. It's just where he comes on that list. And for me, the thing I love about Mo Salah, is the consistency, the longevity as well as the goals and the ability. And when I think of this great Liverpool team that he's been part of for not far off, nearly 10 years now, I think of Alisson, I think of Van Dijk, and I think of Salah. Probably the same way I think of the 80s teams when I think of Hansen, Souness and Dalglish. I think of that spine. Those three players are what really put Liverpool where they are today. I think the thing I love about Salah as well is I don't think he's ever really had a bad season. Even some great players at times, they're not at the same level and they come back the year after. Mo Salah gets 30 goals every season for Liverpool. He's never injured. I love that fact about players. I love players who are on that team sheet week after week, and that's exactly what Mo Salah is. His record in the biggest games, especially against Manchester United as well, he's got some iconic moments, and for me, one of the greatest players and greatest goal scorers who's ever seen at Liverpool Football Club. Number 5 is the greatest goal scorer in Liverpool's history, and is a figure that will never be beaten, which is 346 goals for the club, and that is Ian Rush. A huge part of that 80s team, won everything. It was a thorn in my childhood at times. Goals he scored against Everton. I think he's got the record, hasn't he, in Merseyside derbies. And I think those goals as well that he got in those cup finals in 86 and 89, that's when, we're talking about Everton and Liverpool being the two best teams probably in the country at that time. The FA Cup final was absolutely huge, on a completely different level to where that cup is today. And they are iconic moments in Liverpool's history for different reasons. Winning the double for the first time in 1986, in 1989 on the back of what had happened at Hillsborough in the semi-final as well. So so many goals, so many sort of memories, and winning trophies for Liverpool, and he was pretty unstoppable in front of goal. And as I said, a figure that I don't think will ever be beaten is 346 goals for Liverpool Football Club. Number 4 is John Barnes, a player I played with once in the first team, and I made my second appearance. Me and him played central midfield for a half against West Ham. A player I marvelled at as a kid. He was the best player in the country for 4 seasons, probably the best player in Britain, probably the best 5 or 6 players in world football, I would say, from 1987 to 1991. Left wing, centre forward. I played with him, as I said, and trained with him for 12 months. Was still technically the best player at the club when he was at the end of his time. I would say still technically the best player I've ever played alongside or trained with, no matter who I've played with. You can imagine some of the great players I've played with. No one could match John Barnes, no. And even though Liverpool have had so many great teams before John Barnes come in the 60s, the 70s, the early 80s, I still feel like John Barnes was different to what Liverpool had before. Liverpool had great wingers, Steve Highway being one, Peter Thompson was one. I've mentioned Ian Carragher was more of a wide midfield player. But John Barnes was different when he came. He almost brought something special, almost like a different brand of football and skill and an ability to Liverpool, and maybe something that they hadn't seen before. And for me, one of the greatest players to ever play for the club, and still for me, as I said, one of the best players I ever played with, and that's why he goes in at number 4. Number 3 is the player that my dad still says to this day is the greatest player he ever saw play for Liverpool. And that is Graeme Souness. I don't think this country, Great Britain, and there's been some great midfield players, I've ever had an out-and-out central midfield player as good as Graeme Souness. When I think of what he've achieved, and we all know the names that we say, especially in the Premier League era, but very rarely do you see a midfield player with that steel, but also with that style. His steel alone would have been enough to make him one of the top midfield players of his generation. His passing ability alone would have made him one of the best midfield players of his generation. But when you put the two of them together, I think the best central midfield player this country's ever seen. I do believe that. He's won 3 European Cups. I think he's won the league 4 or 5 times. He was only at Liverpool 6 years. I think he's at Liverpool 6 years, Graeme, and he only doesn't win the league once. I think one season, maybe. in 1981, and he wins the European Cup that year. So he does pretty well at Liverpool. Ends up being the captain as well. I actually don't think he gets enough. People don't talk about Graeme Souness enough outside of Liverpool Football Club about how good he was. I think for the time he would have been the best central midfield player in Europe and world football. Number 2, so this is the big one. You know who's left. Who am I going to go for? I am going to go, at number 2, I am going to go for the greatest figure in the history of Liverpool Football Club, and that is Kenny Dalglish. He's the greatest figure because of what he did as a player, what he did as a manager, what he is as a figure at the club now, what he did for the club around Hillsborough when he was the manager. He's just, for me, when I think of Liverpool, I think of Kenny Dalglish. But this, unfortunately, is just about the playing career for Kenny, not getting number 1 spot. And I know a lot of people have put him at number 1, and rightly so. But what a player, what a brain. That's when I think of Kenny Dalglish, I think of the football brain. He was tough. He'd hold the ball up, he would fight, he'd score goals. But the thing that stood out, I think, is when you see some of his goals, and not just goals, it's the cheeky, the chips, the back heel when he puts Phil Neal in a European game, backing into people in the box, scoring goals there. And when I think of Liverpool players, and we've spoken about some of the flair players, and that's what Kenny was. But we don't just have flair players at this club who are just sort of footballers, the fighters as well, the men. And that's the way I describe Kenny Dalglish. A little bit like Graeme. It's steel with ability. They couldn't be bullied. And again, the reason I go back to these players and these teams, there's no other club in this country who've had an era of dominating Europe. That's what these players did. They dominated European football. We've seen it from an Ajax team in the past with Cruyff. We've seen it with Beckenbauer's Bayern Munich. We've seen it with Real Madrid teams, with Di Stefano, maybe Ronaldo years later. But in terms of English football, nobody else has dominated European football for a spell. And that's what these Liverpool players did. So I've just mentioned Graeme Souness being the best in his position in the world for the time. That's exactly what Kenny Dalglish was. He was the best centre-forward in the world in the early 80s. And remarkable footballer, remarkable man, remarkable football brain, and that's why he comes second for me. And number 1, we all know who it is, my big mate Steven Gerrard. Why have I chosen him over Kenny Dalglish? Because I'm sure that is the big decision that everyone involved in this will have. Maybe I've sided with Stevie because I played with him. I know him more. I can remember more moments because, as I said, I played with him every day and every game. I'd also say that he probably didn't play with the calibre of player that Kenny, Graeme or John Barnes played with as well, and probably helped those teams win more trophies or certainly league titles. But the reason I've just edged for Stevie for the top of this list is 2 reasons. And it's the European Cup final in 2005 and the FA Cup final in 2006. Those moments for me, he dragged the team and the club over the line, whereas I think other great players have done that in the past, but have probably had a little bit more help from the teammates. And when I judge Stevie against other players of his generation, the one thing I always go back to is, not could Stevie have done what they did in their team? If I put them in this Liverpool team, could they do what Stevie Gerrard did? And could we have achieved what we did as a team without Stevie Gerrard, and we put this player in our team? And I just go back to that European Cup final in 2005. I go back to the FA Cup final in 2006. And they are performances for the ages. Those performances will be getting talked about in 40, 50 years' time. And the fact that I think most people would agree that Istanbul, I would say, is probably the most iconic moment, or probably the number 1 game in the club's history, means the effect Stevie had on that game. I'm going to go for Steven Gerrard as my greatest ever Liverpool player.